so much for tuning in today. I'm very excited. I have a very special guest. I know I say that all the time, but this is personal. This is super personal. This is my very own comedy instructor.
Let's be honest, Melissa. Come on. Guy's got Reagan jokes. There's also a tip that I give people not to write about what's in the news. And my ex-girlfriend, she should have wore a mask.
Yeah, that's right. I actually took comedy classes. Can you believe that's even a thing? Joel Fragomeni. Hey, what's up, Joel?
Hey, Melissa. How you doing?
Good. You never knew one of your students was going to rope you into something like this, huh?
My students, I've done a lot of things for students, actually, over the years. Try to support them in their projects. And you've certainly, good. I mean, I always say this to you, and I know, and believe me, Melissa likes it when I say this, but you have had perhaps the greatest success of any of my comedy students to this point.
Say it again for the people in the back that didn't hear you.
Greatest success.
Say it again.
Well, greatest success, at least as far as you have created your own shows. I'm sure as people know that watch this, that Melissa promotes comedy shows all over Michigan and has done really great with that. And, you know, everybody likes doing Melissa shows. You have a great reputation in the business for that. I think some of that you learned from me in my class and sort of helping you along to get these shows running. And I like that, you know, you have proven my thesis on how to run comedy shows. Awesome. And prove that that works. And of course you add your own charm and your own intellect to it. You know, it's not just exactly doing what I'm saying. So I always give you credit for that.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I told you I wanted to be your number one student, and I'm still working towards that.
In years. I think you've surpassed me in so many ways at this point.
Well, you know what? This is an interesting time that we're living in, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, yeah. I really wanted to dive into a little bit because, you know, we talk about in your class, first of all, tell people what you do, what your class is that you teach. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I teach the advanced comedy class at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, and it is for people who are have a little bit of experience doing stand-up but want to do it professionally. So it's not merely, I'm going to help you write jokes and put you on stage and your friends and family will come watch you. We have a class for that. Bill Bashar teaches it, the beginner comedy class, and it's great. But my class is for people who want to make money at it and go a little further with it, maybe run their own shows like you've done, and just figure out how to get yourself booked, how to get your face out there, how to deal with professionals in the business. I've been doing comedy for 20 years, and I've played all over with so many famous names and different venues, and had some experience in film and television and radio and podcasting and all this stuff. So I use all that experience and give it to people in a way that they wouldn't have time, or, you know, that most people wouldn't really need when you're first starting out. You know?
Yeah, and your classes fill up. They're always full.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they fill up great. We were interrupted by the coronavirus outbreak. I think I got 3 in, so we're going to have to make that one up. But the class will be coming back. Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle will be reopening whenever they let us reopen. And there will be classes. So
awesome.
I'm excited to get back to those. So.
Well, one thing that was, I mean, the whole class was awesome. I mean, we could touch on every subject, but we don't want to give the whole class away on YouTube.
Not here.
But
not for what you're charging.
Let's wait till, you know, you can get the charge back in there and make sure that people are paying for it. But
I thought I could get people to pay on this thing, I'd do it here. But
hey, there you go. I bet you we could figure that out. I might be able to help you.
Yeah, you could make that happen.
I'll host your class. How about that?
You're hustling.
So how to be a comedy writer? Like, give us a hint. Give us something. Like, what is something you go through with your students on how to sit down and improve their set?
Well, I think writing is, obviously writing, so much of comedy is written, you know. It is not made up on the spot. It is, you know, you are, as a stand-up comedian, you are going up doing a routine. It's called a routine for a reason. It's something you do all the time. So you want to make sure that your jokes work. I think the biggest piece of advice is, you know, keep the jokes that work and drop the ones that don't work. Don't fall in love with your own jokes just because you think they're funny. The audience has to laugh at what you said. and remember the ones that they laughed at and the ones they didn't, don't use them again. If you can't remember that, and some people can't, that's why you tape your shows, audio tape it or videotape it and watch it back. As far as everybody's technique is different as far as, how to actually write. Do people type it? Do people write it out longhand? Do people just, say it into a recorder? So in that way, I think it's very different. But I think once you have an act, refining it, I think is there's definitely a system to do that. There's definitely a way to make sure that, I'm using this joke. Oh, this premise really worked. I was talking about, if you're a guy and you're saying, I'm talking about being divorced right now. And people really latch onto that. Then when you sit down to write again, you go, oh, more divorce jokes. Those worked really well. I'm going to add to that. So a big part of writing is rewriting. It's adding things to your set. I've talked about some of these terms in the class, which maybe everyone won't get, but you can look them up. Tags, callbacks, those kind of things. Start adding those to your act. Changing the order of things is great. I talk a lot about having a great opening joke and a great closing joke. So what are the qualities of those?
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to develop those.
Yeah.
Like
every good comic has those. Every good comic has a good opener. Every good comic has a great closer.
Yeah, and that was a big takeaway for me, like right away in the beginning when I came to class is you talked about we're gonna rehearse your 7 to 10 minute set every week throughout this class, and most of the comedians in my class wanted to do something different every single week, and you recommended to us that we do the same thing, and I think I was the only one that kept rehashing the same stuff, and throughout the class you and the rest of the classmates helped me add so many taglines, so many good punch to those jokes. And I don't think people realize, like you said, it's a routine. It's something you've said 100 times, and I think it's our job to present it like it's the first time we said it. That's part of the thing.
That's the essence of good comedy, is that it sounds like you're talking to your friend and you're saying something off the top of your head, but it's something that you've said 100 times and you've practiced and you've rewritten it and made it. That's why people can't, people hear a good comedian, they can't believe this guy is this funny, because nobody's that funny. You don't sit with somebody and they're that funny, they're just not, that. I mean, but the comedian has created this illusion of everything I say is going to make you laugh every 5-10 seconds. And when you have that, that's when you're killing it,
Right.
And for people to say, oh, I'm sick of these jokes, and then they stop doing them and they try to write new ones, it just kind of doesn't work that way. Keep the ones that work that people like.
Right.
Because it's too hard to write good jokes,
Right.
And some people think they can always write, oh, I'll sit down and write great stuff today. And it doesn't always work that way.
How many times do you think a comedian needs to spit a joke out before they actually get it funny?
Well, I think some people work on stuff, and in my case, I mean, there's stuff that, has been in my act for almost 20 years, and I still will refine it at times. Sometimes it's a matter of just adding something to the end of it, moving it around in the set. Sometimes stuff works right away and you keep it that way and you do it that way forever. And I think other things you figure out that you can change them. Jokes do get old. That's not a lie. References get dated. You want to make sure that you're, I have jokes about, celebrities that have died, and I don't feel comfortable doing those jokes, so it's like, oh, Michael Jackson died, and there goes the joke.
Right.
I had a great Saddam Hussein bit, and then I forget how that went. But I remember when he died, I went like, I can't do this Saddam Hussein bit anymore. Which is also a tip that I give people, not to write about what's in the news, because it does get old, and then you can't really do those things anymore.
Right.
So, then you sound like you're a comic that's, just talking about old things.
Right.
And there's certainly guys that do that, but then the audience, then that illusion of being spontaneous is completely gone.
Right.
Because you're talking about celebrities and news items from, 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
And then that's giving some people credit, I don't want to name names, but
Right. Yeah, don't name names.
This guy's got Reagan jokes. They're not fresh anymore, dude.
Yeah, there's a time and a place, but it usually passes by pretty quickly.
Yeah, sure.
So we are, like, currently when you and I are doing this video, we are in lockdown. We're in, coronavirus 2020, and comedians have been put to a complete standstill. Now, everyone in the comedy world and the private comedy pages have been talking about, like, all the coronavirus jokes that are going to come out of this.
Yeah.
And all the, like, how overdone is that going to be?
It's going to be done, and they're going to be done to where, if you're on a show with other comedians, you better hope you're the first guy on stage. Nobody wants to be the first guy on stage, you know that.
Yeah.
But when you're the first comic on stage, they're going to burn all the, as talk about, burning a premise, or, they're going to do all the coronavirus jokes right away, and then you're not going to have any. So I don't think you should lean too heavily on look, it'd be nice, we're all going to have the social distancing jokes. You're going to hear the guy say, I can't get a woman to stand 6 feet next to me when nobody's sick. You can make these jokes. They write themselves. They're not, they're so easy to come up with.
Right.
And so everyone's going to have them. And you're not going to be able to, the audience is going to quickly get sick of them.
Right.
So I don't think you should have too much coronavirus material in your act.
So what is something comedians could be doing right now while they can't be on stage working?
Well, again, I think you can always look at your act. If you have old stuff taped, old shows that, maybe you're 6 months, a year removed from these. We might be a year removed from any comedy if this thing doesn't change. Yeah, I know. But, you can look at those, and like when I talked about rewriting them, listening to what worked, maybe there's a joke. And I know in my case, I've had jokes that I just didn't do one night, and then the next thing you know, you've forgotten about them. Maybe there's old stuff that can come back into your act. I think certainly that's a thing to do, is just look at your act and rewrite it. And then I think the other thing, a big thing, and I've seen some comics doing this, is working on web presence and bios and stuff we talked about in class too, right? Having a good bio, having a good headshot. Maybe those are things you can do and working on your website, working on your Facebook page, whatever you got.
Yeah, that's all really good stuff. Yeah. I know that a lot of us, I think, keep talking about writing new jokes, but then I know for me, like, I've sat down a couple times and then you just kind of look around and you're like, okay, I found something else to do. And then
and part of it is what else do you write about, with this going on in the world? You can get real political, but I don't know that politics is what you want to, you're going to divide the crowd right down the middle, As you can see, you go on Facebook and people talk about restrictions, what we can and can't do, and people are angry.
Yeah, they're really angry. And the longer we're shut down, the more angry they seem to be.
But I think the problem with comedy too is if you can't write a bunch of jokes. You would be doing all those jokes in the past tense when we get back to doing the jokes anyway. That's the thing you have to remember. Not you, but anybody who's listening. Because you're going to be like, oh, and they won't let us go to the hardware department of Meijer. And it's like, no, that was lifted months ago. So all of your jokes are going to be, remember when the governor said we had to wear a mask? And, my ex-girlfriend, she should have wore a mask. There's all these, they're all going to sound dated. It sounds old already.
Right.
Doesn't it?
It does.
So I think that would be a thing to sort of avoid. Maybe I think whoever you're spending more time with, because you're locked down, you're with your family.
Can I do some homeschooling jokes?
Sure, yeah. You're teaching your kids. So that's adjacent to the coronavirus pandemic thing, but it's unique to you because you're talking about, how you dealt with your kids during that, or your husband, or, whoever you're with, some of these comics got nobody.
I know.
They're sitting alone. And
they're used to traveling. They're used to being all the time. And now they're stuck alone, no audience to feed off of. This is an interesting topic that's just kind of crossed my mind a few times. They're speculating that, we could lose 100,000 people to coronavirus, but we could lose another 100,000 people to, domestic violence, self-harm, suicide. Comedians are kind of known for being the Debbie Downers when they're alone.
Sure.
That's kind of scary.
We could spare a few comics.
We
Let's be honest, Melissa. Come on. There's a couple of comics that,
Okay, I know a couple people just.
We hang, a couple you find them hanging from the rafter. You go, okay. What do we got? I mean.
Oh boy. I can always leave it to you for the other side of the perspective.
Well, the sad part is we can't even take their gigs when they're gone because everyone lost their gigs.
Right. There's nothing.
That's the old joke. When the comic dies, they go, "Who's got her gigs?" Or "Who's got his?" That's the old joke.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
The comics at the funeral going, "Who got her Comedy Castle week?" Is it whatever?
It's a brutal world, that's for sure. So this is something unprecedented that comedians have never seen before, is some of us are getting unemployment.
Yes, that is a new thing.
How's that?
I haven't heard. I know as we're recording this, it was only yesterday, I think, was the first time that comedians could apply. Because I'm on the staff of the Comedy Castle, I was actually able to get unemployment through being an employee of Comedy Castle. So I'm not getting the self-employment. So I really don't know exactly how that works and who's been approved and what proof you have to show of that. I'm sure it goes through your taxes.
Yeah, for everything I read and saw, you just have to be able to show proof of payment on your last gig or what your federal tax showed last year. Or
some comedians like to, and again, this is the thing I talk about in comedy class too, is they like to not show their comedy income because they don't want to pay the taxes on it. Mm-hmm. And now, because they're not showing it, they may not get as much unemployment. I know Trump has done the federal funds, $600 a week added. And I've actually, personally, I've gotten that already as well. Mm-hmm. Hey, for some comics, $600 a week is
a hell of a lot more than what they actually made.
And you don't have to drive for it. You don't have to drive to the UP of Michigan in February to make 600. And we've all done that. So that might be a good thing for comedians. I don't know.
That was kind of the bummer about the way this all fell into place, is that we were at the height of our comedy season. Outside of holiday parties in December, we were in the strongest part of our season, because now the year is good.
It's comedy for the next, really the next 2 months would have been really good. And, the previous months. Well, so it's for a lot of guys, they're out of luck, and, maybe they'll all go work at Meyer or something. Or, I say that as a joke, but, I'm okay,
Right.
I said that to somebody on the phone last week, one of my comedy buddies. I forget what I said. I actually will be, I will not be upset when I see the comedy booker who wouldn't use me on his show delivering my DoorDash. I will take a little bit of... well,
it's a good thing you don't hold any grudges. That's good.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I will not feel sad for that person.
So, what do you say to all those comics that are doing the Facebook Lives out there for free? They're just going on and they're rambling and they're trying to be funny. And asking for donations. What's your view on that? What do you got to say?
We're kind of doing that now. Just so we know, just before I say what I'm about to say.
Lay it out, Joel.
I'm doing that now. I know it's Melissa Hager TV. It's a big deal. I get it. But, okay, I've seen some of these, and honestly, to me, I'm not really interested in trying to, I've done my podcast. I've been podcasting for 15 years now, and I've done a few, and I feel weird about that because, my show is supposed to be funny, and I feel like I'm not really all that in a funny mood, and, maybe the show's not as good as it was. I think here's the thing about people doing whatever content they're creating and web chats and stuff, is people are really doing it for themselves. And I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. So even if I were to watch one of these, and I have watched some of them, and even if I think they stink, which they probably do, and they're not all that entertaining, you know, they are doing it for themselves. They're entertaining themselves. They're doing something creative. I think for a lot of people, you know, they're figuring out how to record and do video, and that's really cool. You know, that can be a cool hobby that can definitely help you further along in comedy. But as far as like, you know, I don't think that, you know, some two comedian Zoom chat is not going to take over show business anytime soon.
On the other side of this, are we gonna?
I mean, but I think again, if it keeps you mentally sharp and it gives you something to do, and it's like, oh, I can see the guys that I would normally hang out at the club with, then I think it's great.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's like a lot of open mics and comedy shows. You know, sometimes the audience isn't there, but the comics are having fun.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't think it's hurting comedy at all? Like on the other side of this, people are going to be like, well, I saw that stuff on the internet. That was not.
Yeah. It's just so different live. I mean, you know, the guys that do specials, you know, some of them will do, you know, they'll do a Netflix special or HBO special. And then you go buy a ticket to see them and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And people still buy tickets. You know, there's a thing about wanting to be in the room with somebody.
Right.
That I don't think will go away.
In summary, our comedian family, let's talk to them a little bit. Mm-hmm. So right now they could be working on some jokes, new and old. I like what you said about putting some old audio or some old videos up and watching them. That is something very common I've noticed even within my own sets, is you say something that's funny and somehow you forget about it and you never say it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. Or, you know, oh, the joke used to work better that way, and I should bring it back to that because I've changed it and it's not working. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely things that you can definitely work on your act. You know, try to have some life experience and draw from that because people like that.
Right.
You know, but yeah, it's tough. It's a tough time.
What do you think about?
We're the first to go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The first business is closed.
Done.
Got bars, restaurants. That's it. Closing those first.
You know, because comedians can have that like high energy personality that can be kind of hard to deal with sometimes. What do you think about all the spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends that are in lockdown with their comedian partner right now? And well, I think we should give them people a shout out because that probably sucks right now.
Layla, who's allowing me to do this now. Allowed me to step out of off the couch for 5 minutes to talk to you, or however long we've been talking. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a weird, you know, I think some comedians don't live that life where they're with their partner all the time.
Right.
And so now they are. And there's challenge there. Maybe there'll be lots of divorces and breakups when this is over.
That's what they're guessing.
Finally able to leave the house, people going, all right, see ya. Enough of that.
Well, imagine even like I know, just in my experience, I don't know as many girl comedians full-time as I do guys. So you think about all those, you know, headliner guys that are out traveling 40 weeks out of the year and their spouse or their girlfriend is like, God, I wish you were home more. You're just always traveling. And now they're home and they're probably thinking, okay, well, now I'll never complain again, ever.
I think general comics are not. I think what we've seen in the last show, because we're about a month into this, was the first few weeks are, we're spending all this time with our family. This is great. And I think in the last week or so, people are starting to go like, okay. Enough of these people.
I know.
We've watched all the shows.
I got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and like they have.
Oh yeah.
Some days they're funny and they're tolerant, and some days you can just tell. Like I'm trying to also. So one thing that I've done, I actually took part of Steve Martin's masterclass on stand-up comedy, and one of the very first lessons he teaches in that is he talks about when you're having conversation in general, just with your friends, with colleagues, like mentally make a note of what's funny. When they laugh, like, oh, okay, that was funny. And then write it down when you get home. So I've still been trying to practice that with my kids and just like, I'll say something and see if it gets a reaction out of them. And They're over it. They are.
Yeah,
over
the
it.
kids are probably not your best audience.
No.
Yeah.
And I do not know how people do like full on clean humor. I've been tempted to teach my kids how to swear just because I'm looking for something different to do.
Yeah.
This is not.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know where this. I mean, when the club's open, I mean, whose gigs are,
Yeah.
who's getting booked? I mean, you're going to have to go through that with what you've got, and
Yeah.
having dates with the venue and then trying to find who's available to fill those dates.
Right.
It's going to be crazy.
It'll be wild.
Yeah.
Be wild. Well, obviously, we wish the best out to all of our comedian friends
Yeah.
in this strange time. It's definitely weird. And yeah, Joel, let's talk about getting your class online. I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. I don't know how that. I mean, so much of it is that interactivity that and plus I want to hear people's acts, and I don't know if that. Certainly that element, I don't think you can really. I mean, if somebody were to say, I'm going to get on a webcam and do my act and I'm going to critique you, yeah, it's not really going to work.
Yeah.
For me, because how much of it is nonverbal and so
Right.
much of it is standing and commanding the room and stuff. So all of that would be gone. Yeah, but there's other things we could talk about.
And maybe it just is lecturing. Maybe you'll have to just do some of your, lecturing. You have that notebook full of goodies that has anyone never tried to steal your secret notebook?
Probably not. I've probably left it places and people can go through it, but I don't give that away. But there's actually not. Most of it is here anyway. It's just it's kind of like when I do comedy. It's just the topic.
Yeah.
It's just the subject, and then everything else is up here.
Up there. Well, you're good at it.
Thank you, Melissa.
You do a good job. Thank
you so much.
Fascinated. When I took your class, I was pretty new. I had only been doing comedy a few months, and someone had suggested your class, and I thought, well, I better get right to it. And I spent a whole summer driving back and forth an hour and a half each way.
I have that. People do come from far away.
Yeah.
I got people from Canada and Ohio and all these places.
Yeah.
That take it. So it's pretty unique in that way. I think it's helped a lot of people that have taken it. And, I even say if you take the class and you figure out maybe comedy's not for me, I say, well, hey, at least you saved yourself months and years of, rejection and, long car rides trying to figure that out,
Right.
But if you have a passion for it, I would never be one to tell people not to do it. If you're telling me, I have a passion, I want to do this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. All right, well, here's my experience on how to do it the right way. Yeah. And some people it works and some people it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm trying to give you the tools and you sink or swim. And some people, don't take my advice. And then other people take my advice and still don't have as much success as they wish they had. And everybody's different, It's a very unique and very challenging business.
Yes, it is. It is. And there's a lot of different motives behind your delivery, depending on who you are and what stake you have in it. I mean, we have all different kinds. So very cool. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today, Joel. It'll be this, I'm sure this very interview will have millions of views, especially when my first movie gets produced and we get on Netflix and all that stuff. So,
well, you enjoy the revenue in source from this interview.
I'm sure I got at least $1.50 coming. So
I hope so. You earned it. Trust me.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. That is Joel Fragomeni, my very own comedy teacher, sharing a few of his secrets and what you can be doing right now to be funnier. Or if you're a comic sitting at home, like, what do I do? Like, listen, rewind, play it again. We got stuff we can do. Do your homework, for heaven's sakes. And when Joel's up and running again, I'm sure he'll be posting classes. I'll post your Facebook page, Joel. Let everybody know your podcast too.
Yeah, joelradio.net is where you can get the podcast.
And you got hundreds of episodes.
Oh, like I said, it was actually the 15th anniversary of me doing a podcast right when the pandemic hit. So I didn't even get to do a special show about it or anything, and I would have liked to. But yeah, joelradio.net. There's episodes going back to 2005 on that. And of course, anywhere you get podcasts like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Stitcher, they will have the show as well. Search for joelradio.net. That's the best way to get it. And yeah, I'll keep doing those.
Okay. Cool.
Lots of comedy advice on there. Lots of good comics on those shows too. So
yeah,
you've been on there.
I've been on there. Yeah. Maybe I'll post that specific link in case anybody
feel free
wants to see that one. All right, everybody, have an awesome day. We'll see you again soon.